my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and wide.
This is Marjohn Love, and this is Marjohn's Musings. I wanted to talk to you about the creative process that I go through when I'm writing. But my last show, Gallivanting, I ran out of time before I finished telling you about the museums that Kevin and I went to in Amsterdam. So I'm going to start today with Welcome to I. It was a great museum. It was all about the history of cinematography, and it went all the way back to old cinescopes and rotating slit lamps that had the very first moving pictures. And there were little, sort of the shape of a bumper car, and you could sit in this little cubby, and there was a touch screen, and you could bring up these different film clips. And then after you looked at all the arcane equipment from the very first video cameras to the beginnings of film and all the way through to reel tape, which I used to see as a child at the movie theater. You know, we're coming into July and it gets hot. And when I was a kid in New Jersey, we didn't have air conditioning. Not very many people did. So my grandmother would give me a quarter. And for that, I could get into a double feature and I could get a soda, popcorn, and candy. Think about that for a minute. The movie, 2 movies, was 10 cents, and it was 5 cents for a soda, 5 cents for popcorn, and 5 cents for a box of candy. And we kids would sit there at this matinee all during the heat of Saturday, and we'd arrive sometime between noon and 1, and we'd get out at like 3:30, 4 in the afternoon. I loved movies. I also liked television, but in those days, television was black and white, and it was a tiny screen. I know I'm sounding nostalgic, but I went to the Second Glance's Seaside Vintage Market. It was at #VillageAtHome. My husband was going to be celebrating Father's Day, so I bought what I thought was a man's kimono and a beautiful obi sash. And then I'm on YouTube trying to learn how to tie the sash, and come to find out that the kimono is supposed to be doubled over and flapped over your chest. It didn't meet at the middle. And the reason it was long is because it was doubled over. And I realized that I purchased my husband a petite woman's kimono. Although the obi is plenty big enough. And he's like, no, I don't want that kind of obi. Even if you got me a new kimono, I want like a black leather one. Sort of like, I looked at my price tag slip and was like, ah. But anyway, the Eye Museum was right underneath that tower. So when we took the ferry boat with like, I don't know how many bicycles across the channel to go up to the tower, we were a bit early. We didn't know what traffic would be like going to the tower for our reservation supper, where the tower spun around and looked at the entire city of Amsterdam. And we got there early enough that we said, hey, isn't that a museum? Let's go peek in. And it was really fun. I have one more museum, but I'm going to save it till the end. Anyway, the thing about vintage got me thinking of nostalgia. got me thinking about reflection. You know, the souvenir to go back again. I'm headed to the International Women's Writing Guild's annual retreat. I haven't gone in several years because the price kept going up and up and up. In the beginning, Marjohn and Marjohn and Susan Tiberghian sponsored me the year that my dad died, and they gave me a scholarship. I had to pay a small amount of money, but not the full $700-something that it cost. And the women at the International Writing Guild taught me how to take my grief and my anger and put them down on the page. Susan Tiberghian teaches memoir, and I've talked to you about her before. But one day, one of the teachers said to me, you know, you should really fictionalize this because it's an incredible story, and it would be good for you to take a step back, create characters, and then through those characters, you can change events from your own life into stories from other people's lives, fictitious people's lives. It gives you a little distance, makes you more objective, and it's more readable for the reader than a memoir that's full of angst. So you know how I talked to you a lot about Daily Word. So Daily Word has a book you can buy, a little pamphlet book called Courage to Imagine. In the Courage to Imagine, on page 15, there's a quote from the Daily Word, Saturday, February 4th, 1939. Rich ideas. Identifying myself with God, I receive ideas which bring abundant good to me. Your blessings do not come from any force outside yourself, but from divine mind, which inspires you with creative ideas to use and put into operation. You are endowed with the power to bring every spiritual blessing into manifestation. Assert your power by claiming your good, and abundant blessings will come to you from every direction. I thought that was kind of powerful, and it made me think about what directions did inspiration come to me. I shared with you this book that I found at the transfer station. For those of you who are tourists, that's the dump. I went into the dump, and they have this book shack. And I was peeking in the book shack, and I found this book that somebody didn't throw in the paper recycle bin. They didn't want it anymore, but they thought it might be worth something to someone. And I'm really glad they did. It's called Writer's Ink. I put some highlighter on page 202. Meaningful interaction keeps a group moving forward toward an intended goal. Ask relevant questions and evaluate the group's performance. And then in parentheses it adds, including your personal performance. So I've told you before that I go to the UCC church in Rockport. The locals call it the Congo. It's the Congregational Church. And while our minister, Derek Van Goulden, was away on sabbatical, the worship committee came up with an idea. They handed out these little cards, and they asked, what voice played an important role in your life? What was it about the voice? Was it the tone quality? Did you hear something in the voice beside the message that was important to you? How did or does that voice make you feel? Well, it made me think that one of the most powerful voices I ever heard is the singer on Runa. And this Runa CD is titled Stretched on Your Grave. When I heard the song, it touched my soul. It made me cry, and I don't mean get misty. I mean hit the remote control repeat button, and weep. Now that sounds a bit maudlin, but for a writer, that's gold. If something touches your heart and causes you to just shed tears, there's substance there. It's an inspiration. So I'm going to read you the lyrics to Stretched on Your Grave. I am stretched on your grave, and I'll lie here forever. If your hands were in mine, I'd be sure they would not sever my apple tree, my brightness. It's time we were together, for I smell of the earth, and I'm worn by the weather. When my family think that I'm safely in my bed, oh, from morn till night, I am stretched out at your head, calling out unto the earth with tears hot and wild for the loss of a girl that I loved as a child. Do you remember the night? Oh, the night when we were lost, in the shade of the blackthorn and the touch of the frost. Thanks be to Jesus, we did all that was right, and your maidenhead still is your pillar of light. Oh, the priests and the friars, they approach me in dread. Oh, for I love you still, all my life, and you're dead. I still will be your shelter through rain and through storm. And with you in your cold grave, I cannot sleep warm. So I am stretched on your grave, and I'll lie here forever. If your hands were in mine, I'd be sure they would not sever my apple tree, my brightness. It's time we were together, for I smell of the earth, and I'm worn by the weather. Well, I can't tell you how many times I played that song. The singer in Runa does a gorgeous job, and I'm going to play you the song later in the show. But the lyrics dug at me. And I realized that the reason that I wept so hard is I had recently lost my dear friend Sally Costello. She died June 20th, 2012. That was an anniversary date yesterday. So what came of the song? Well, I had the courage to imagine. And so I imagined what sort of man wrote that poem and the music to go with it and the gorgeous violin interludes? And I thought, well, he's got to be Irish and he's got to be Catholic. And I searched to find what sort of image would he be. Some of you may be familiar with the maquette in the Gloucester Museum of the Angel for the Fallen of the Railroad. And I thought, that's him. And so with an image of this beautiful man, blonde and gray-eyed, I'm not sure why gray-eyed, but gray-eyed, I had come up with Sam Davis. Now, Sam grew up Catholic, and my grandmother was Catholic, and so I had an epiphany when Kevin was in Iraq, and I thought he had been killed. And I met Jesus at 3 a.m., drunk out of my mind, on my floor in my kitchen, with a straight-edged razor blade in my hand. I don't think I'm the only one who, when confronted with the death of their beloved, feels suicidal. Waddy Mitchell in Sweat Equity does a couple of poems about post-traumatic stress disorder. And my husband was in Iraq twice. He worked mental health care with soldiers. Now that he's a veteran, he's joined the Home Base Veteran and Family Care. It's a division of Massachusetts General Hospital that's supported by the Red Sox Foundation. It came to be because General Hammond discovered that he'd lost more of his soldiers to suicide than he did in battle. And recently, they decided to open up their services not just to veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan, but also to veterans of the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War might sound like ancient history, but the American Legion just this month came out with a big article about Agent Orange, a relentless tragedy. And so the Vietnam War is still affecting people right here, right now. Kevin and I were invited to a gala. Now, normally, going to a gala would be like, woohoo, we're going to a gala. It's going to be held at that museum I told you about, the JFK, and I have a new dress and new shoes and new flappers. And the dress is sleeveless because it's a formal. So I bought a little white shrug to hide my old lady arms. I'm a little nervous about it because it isn't just Kevin and I going out to have a good time like we did in Amsterdam. I'm the wife, and Kevin's going to be there in kind of a work capacity, which means that I might spend quite a bit of the time at this event by myself as he glad hands people and chats to people and tries to be gracious to donors and supporters, and because things things don't happen by magic. I mean, sometimes we think that things happen by magic. You know, if you wave a magic wand, something wonderful will occur. But like Madonna sang, you know, I'm a material girl in a material world. And in order to pay psychologists and psychiatrists and social workers and mental health workers, home base has to raise money. I mean, the Red Sox contribute a great deal, and so does Mass General Hospital, but it costs a lot of money to bring veterans in from anywhere in the country to stay for a 2-week intensive. There's also a program for Gold Star wives. For those of you that are not familiar with the military environment, a blue star means you have someone in the field. A gold star means they were lost in action. If you lose your husband or your father or your brother or your son in battle, usually they're young and fit and able-bodied, and it's a tragic loss. Waddy talks about that. So back to Runa. I'd like to take the song section by section and kind of tell you what I did. I am stretched on your grave and I'll lie here forever. If your hands were in mine, I'd be sure they would not sever my apple tree, my brightness. Well, that's an homage, an homage, they say, you know, to Robert Burns and his love poetry for Maud Gond. It's time we were together, for I smell of the earth, and I'm worn by the weather. So, in Saigon's deadly game, I have Private Daniel Dempsey sleep on the ground. And he wakes up with leeches on him. But Sam Davis, who's a major and has done a couple of tours, hangs a hammock up in the trees. And the tree in the story, do you remember the night, oh, the night we were lost? So I have Sam Davis and his blood brother Charlie and young Private Dempsey and 2 dogs out in the bush in Vietnam searching for missing in action Derek Martle Johnson. And the song says, when we were lost in the shade of the blackthorn. I don't know if any of you remember, but there for a while I was wicked into researching trees because I didn't know what a blackthorn looked like or where it grew or how big it got or if I could use it in the story. And after a whole lot of work, it turned out that blackthorn trees don't grow in Vietnam, and I wasn't able to use it, so Sam strings up his hammock in a generic tree. But it was kind of interesting. I got to learn a lot of stuff about trees. And the touch of the frost, well, I don't get to explore the parachute cords that Sam brings home when he gets discharged from the Army back into the States and goes on reserve status like my husband until Sam's West Coast Adventures, when Jerry the cop tries to find out what's so special about these clotheslines. And Sam explains that they're parachute cords, and they have a steel cable in the center of them, so they can't be cut. I used them twice. The second time is kind of interesting, at least to me. And then the stanza, thanks be to Jesus, we did all that was right, and your maidenhead still is your pillar of light. Well, a maidenhead is a flap of skin that in the old days was stared at by priests and whoever else not to prove that a bride in an arranged marriage was still a virgin. And a pillar of light, that innocence was one's way up the staircase into heaven. That if you died as a virgin and you were sinless, then you were sure you would go to heaven. But in the story, the girl that Sam loves as a child is Adrienne. And because she's killed in a mysterious car accident that doesn't get resolved until a book I haven't published yet called Sometimes Love is Letting Go, there would be no reason to do an autopsy on a grade schooler to examine if she was still a virgin. It didn't fit. But the concept was powerful. So in Saigon's Deadly Game, the heroine is a 12-year-old by the name of Tu Kim, who's kidnapped by a pimp and put out on the street not as a whore, but as a lure into a deadly gambling game. And so I used the autopsy and the proof of virginity during the wedding scene of Derek Martle Johnson to his bride Bonnie, when her angry, jealous father accuses him of consorting with prostitutes, and the good doctor speaks up and says he was with that girl for a week and she was still a virgin on autopsy. I thought it was important for both Sam and for Derek, who were both raised Catholic, to show sexual restraint, because many Catholic men, nearly all are taught this, but many Catholic men do show sexual restraint. And they're faithful husbands and good fathers. So the line, oh, the priests and the friars, they approach me in dread. Oh, for I love you still, all my life, and you're dead. The loss of a loved one is a major cause of suicide. But in the Catholic religion, suicide is a mortal sin from which one cannot enter heaven. And it's questionable in some people's mind whether one can be absolved of this sin even through confession. And I think the idea that killing oneself is a sin, something evil, is because of the havoc that's wrought in the family and the loved ones of the murderer of oneself. To murder oneself one has to be terribly, terribly depressed and hopeless. And so in Saigon's Deadly Game, after Tu Kim is killed, and it's not a dun dun dun, did she get killed? She shows up in chapter 1 to Marge's writing room as a ghost. Now Marge is the purported author of the saga and the main character, and it's her memoir, and it's kind of fun for me because Marge gets to be all sorts of things that I'm not, and I get to write about stuff I'm curious about or things that I've experienced, but have them come out slightly different than they did, or have them come out exactly the same as they did. If I ever develop a readership, I wonder if they'll be able to figure out which things are true as writ and which things were modified through creative license. But Derek sets his mind and his purpose on saving Kim's life. And so after she's killed, and he lives just barely, I still will be your shelter through rain and through storm, and with you in your cold grave, I cannot sleep warm. Well, Kim, who went to Catholic boarding school when her father was afraid that she might be kidnapped, because the Viet Minh and the Viet Cong were kidnapping children of French descent. Kim's family is Buddhist, and Kim is cremated. In a Buddhist ceremony, there is no grave to lie on. And Derek is left with this crippling grief. And Sam takes the role. If your hands were in mine, I'd be sure they would not sever my apple tree, my brightness. And because of the bond that Sam and Derek have, from Derek saving Sam's life, and then Sam doing recon out in the bush, getting lost, and eventually finding Derek at death's door and saving Derek's life, a deep and profound love develops between them, which confuses Sam, who loved Adrienne and had difficulty loving again, who was attacked as a child by an itinerant priest because I felt that story needed to be told when he was only a boy, a little boy, and now has to deal with gender identity at a time in the army when don't ask, don't tell was a distant vision which hadn't occurred yet. And so in Sam's West Coast Adventures, which is the second book, Derek asks Sam to be the best man at his wedding. And Sam takes off across country to sort his head out because he doesn't know if he can do that. So this journal that my husband gave me for Christmas is coming with me to the IWWG International Women's Writing Guild Retreat. The time that I was developing these books, Kevin had come back from his second tour in Iraq. and Sally had died. Now, why is that so important? Well, I don't know if any of you have a backdoor neighbor. They show up at your back door or you show up at theirs. And a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or iced tea or iced water or something is made ready so they can sit at your kitchen table or you can sit at theirs and share the secrets of your heart. But Sally was that kind of a neighbor. And when she died, I was grief-stricken. Odd, the way life plays out. Fortunately for me, my husband wasn't one of the 12 soldiers who were killed when mortar fire destroyed the communications tower when Kevin and I were on the telephone, and I heard the sound of the melting wires in my ear. I made CDs. I spent quite a bit of money buying CDs and jewel cases, and I made CDs of Saigon's Deadly Game and Sam's West Coast Adventure, and I rented a shop down on Bearskin Neck, and I'm old. People don't use CDs anymore. They go to Amazon.com and they download books onto their Kindle, or they go to the Nook outlets and they download books onto their Nook. Some they're paying rent to sell copies of my book, and not only are people not coming in, but those that do come in are not interested in purchasing CDs. It's kind of strange how the world works. I told you my friend Patricia and my neighbor Elizabeth and my neighbor Sally, and now my friend Shirley and my friend Joyce and my friend Norma and my neighbor Stephen are all victims of cancer or trying to cope with it. That's a heck of a lot of people around me. Makes me wonder what's in the water, what's in the air, what's in the food. And the fact that Joyce is very dear to me and Shirley was very dear to me and Norma's a sweetheart, and that I'm apt to go through this again and maybe not too long. So instead of dwelling on all that all the time, I put on the Sounds of the Caribbean CD and I play that over and over. It has sounds of nature in it, and it's lovely, it's beautiful. And these scarves, well, I showed you my last set that I made to sell at the shop. I sold 4 out of dozens. So I took them to the Love family reunion and I gave them to my husband's relatives, his lady relatives. But IWWG is over $1,300, not including gas and tolls to get there and back. And so I overcame my fear of the label on my mordant for the silk dye, and I was very careful with disposing it and being around it. And I dyed up a whole new set of scarves, and I'm going to take them with me to the conference because they have an art bazaar and book sale. And I'm going to let them know that the scarves are for sale to help defray the costs of the trip, and that I'm an author, on Amazon. So my husband, being a sweetheart, went and got me Avery business cards so that I could make business cards to take to the conference. There we are trying to print them. And of course, I don't know if you can see this, but the registration's off and the cards. And then instead of printing the back on the front, it printed the front on the back. And then you had to pop them out of these little frames. And my laser printer takes the paper and pulls it through once and prints the back, and then pulls it back in and prints the front, and then spits it out. And of course, because these are designed to pop free, and they were getting like damaged and getting caught in the printer. It was like this comedy of errors, like, oh my goodness. And the frustration level, we're doing this at night. He's worked all day, and I've been running around doing scarves and whatever. And we're there fighting with this printer and these Avery labels. They ask you, will you take a survey? What was the best part of your experience? Well, the design module on the website worked great, and they warn you, don't ever put fit to page. Well, why not? Well, because there's this frame around the design area, and if you put fit to page, your images will print up in the frame area and the registration will be off. But I hate to tell you, I had to sit there with the paper cutter. I have like all these different like half disasters of cards where one side printed but the other side didn't, or both sides printed but the back was upside down to the front, or the printer would jam and we'd unblock the jam and it would double print upside down. It's like, and so they asked, will you ever recommend Avery do-it-yourself printed home business cards to anybody? What's the chance? 1 to 10. I put like 0. And then I thought, this making the size 93% is a big part of the printing problem. The cards are slightly too small. And I figured that out, and I tried to change it because I do a lot of graphics editing here at 1623 Studios because I edit this show. And I thought, no, 95%, that would actually fill the space that's printable without going over the edges. I'm doing it online. They will not let me change the resolution to 95%. So what else did I get at the Vintage Day? I got Jeux de Cartes Encyclopédie. So I got 2 different boxes of them. And I thought, oh, this'll be great. Because I understood the first few questions, and I thought, wow, I'll be able to brush up on my French because my Marie Blanche has been dead since 1989, and I have no one to speak French to. And then I get a few more questions into it when I get home, and I realize that not only do I need my Larousse French to English dictionary just to read the bloody questions, I need Blanche's book of French idioms because some of the turns of phrase are like idiomatic, like throwing a party. What did you pick up all the people and the goodies and pitch them in the pool? There's French ones like that they're not literal. So But I realized that you saw my set last time, and I had these wonderful goodies in the back. And one of them was this great music box kit and these strips that what they give you with the music box is a couple of strips and then this one that's already perforated for you, that's happy birthday. And in the kit is a little hole punch, and you are to punch holes exactly where the notes go. Ooh, exactly where the notes go, to be able to play them through your music box. When I actually got it home and looked at it, it was kind of like my Jeu des Cartes encyclopedia. I thought, oh, this might take more skill than I have. So, Love Family Reunion is an annual event, and last year I had to work the United Church of Christ in Rockport's fair. I was in the jewelry thing where I repair broken jewelry people donate, and jewelry that they've donated that's in good condition, and we dolly it all up and we price it and we sell it for very little money. And that's coming up soon. I wasn't able to go to the family reunion, so I got voluntold that I was hosting this time. I was like, oh boy, that's extortion that you better come or else. So I have 20 odd people arriving tomorrow. I don't know when this will get on the air because, like I said, I do my own editing, which takes a whole lot longer than shooting the show, believe me. So I've talked to you about Thich Nhat Hanh. He's kind of my Lama, you know, now that Lama Marut's married and living in Australia. I don't go to Lama Marut retreats anymore, so I've been reading Thich Nhat Hanh. And I want to share with you effortlessness. Do we need to make a special effort to see the beauty of the blue sky? Do we have to practice to be able to enjoy it? No, we just enjoy it. Each second, each minute of our lives can be like this. Wherever we are at any time, we have the capacity to enjoy the sunshine, the presence of each other, even the sensation of our breathing. We don't need to go to China to enjoy the blue sky. We don't have to travel into the future to enjoy our breathing. We can be in touch with these things right now. It would be a pity if we were only aware of suffering. So, I almost called today's show the Tour du Poo. It comes from the museum Microbia that Kevin and I went to, and I was going to do this entire blah, blah, blah rant about Donald Trump making the Border Patrol take children from their parents, incarcerate the parents in jail for being the criminals they are to seek asylum and refuge in the United States. Where's the Statue of Liberty anyway? And put these children in a state-run institution, some of them little children. Most of these refugees are escaping violence or war or starvation and entering the country legally. It's not easy. You need to look at the statistics about refugees in places where people are of dark skin, and you will find out it takes years, decades to go through the hoops to get into the U.S. So I was going to do this whole rant about because when Saddam Hussein stole Kurdish children, the Americans invaded the country, and when he killed the children, we murdered the man on television. Seriously, it was filmed so everybody could see. And the conference with Kim Jong-un. Oh, that could be a whole nother thing. But I decided I didn't want to be, the self-appointed potentate commentary person. I didn't want to be a pundit. I wanted to share my real life with my friends and neighbors right here in Cape Ann. And so, the Tour de Poo, what's that about? Well, microbia, they have a laboratory and they grow microscopic creepy crawlies and they put them into their environs, usually aquatic environs, with microscopic cameras, and you either peek through and see them or else they're projected up on the wall. And you can see like these guys moving around, ginormous, and really they're little specks. But in some cases, little specks that can kill you. It was fascinating. It was also disgusting. They had this whole wall of feces in jars and dehydrated and stuff, and they're talking about poo. But one of the wonderful things they're doing is there are certain types of infection like C-difficile that can take you out, give you diarrhea so bad you die. And those bad, creepy crawlies are left behind when people have to take large doses of antibiotic. And so microbia came up with a way to infuse people who don't have healthy bacteria in their gut with normal bacteria. It's kind of gross, but that's how they're keeping people alive. I thought that was kind of fascinating. The study of poo becomes a life-giving balm to people, some of whom have been on chemotherapy and whatever, who had to take large doses of antibiotics and then wind up in dire straits and have normal, healthy, creepy crawlies put back into their intestines. 76% are cured after the first treatment, and 98% are cured after the second treatment. I thought, what a blessing, huh? And Kevin insisted that I had to show you his favorite creepy crawly, the water bear. We're out of time. Wish me luck at the writing conference. I'd love to come up with a new theme, a whole new set of characters, a new saga. I haven't written anything in quite a while. I'm hoping the women of the International Women's Writing Guild still know how to do their magic. Get me going again. That's all for now.
I am stretched on your grave, and I'll lie here forever. If your hands were in mine, I'd be sure they would not sever. My apple tree, my brightness, it's time we were together, for I smell of the earth, and I'm worn by the weather. morn till night, I am stretched out at your head, calling out unto the earth with tears hot and wild for the loss of a girl that I loved as a child. Do you remember the night, oh, the night when we were lost in the shade of the blackthorn and the touch of the frost? Oh, and thanks be to Jesus, we did all that was right, and your maidenhead still is your pillar of Oh, the priests and the friars, they approach me in dread. Oh, for I love you still, oh, my life